The popular, romanticized myth of the 14th century presents a time of Arthurian chivalry, noble birthrights, and glorious knights in shining armor. The historical reality is quite different. The Hundred Years' War was a grit-filled triumph of accounting, sovereign debt, and contract law. King Edward III managed his kingdom with the cold logic of a modern executive, prioritizing resource allocation and payroll over the traditional duties of a medieval liege. During this period, military success became inseparable from the mechanics of government finance and the evolution of the English Parliament. In 1337, Edward claimed the French throne. While he framed this as a dynastic right, it functioned practically as a pretext for a hostile corporate takeover. The true strategic prize was Flanders. It was the manufacturing hub of medieval Europe, relying on advanced pedal-driven looms to turn raw materials into high-value textiles. Across the Channel, England held a near-total monopoly on the highest-grade raw wool. By 1336, Edward began using this dominance as a weapon, introducing schemes to tax and redirect exports for royal profit. By leveraging these wool subsidies and seizing the manufacturing centers in Flanders, the English crown attempted to vertically integrate the European textile supply chain by force. For centuries, armies relied on the feudal levy. Vassals owed the king a limited number of unpaid days of military service in exchange for land rights. This carried a critical logistical flaw. Armies would literally dissolve and walk off the battlefield when their time expired, or when the autumn harvest required their labor. Invading France required crossing the English Channel and maintaining long-term, multi-year sieges. The temporary feudal levy was entirely useless for this kind of sustained campaign. To conquer France, Edward needed a permanently deployed workforce that would follow orders indefinitely. He had to shift from feudal duty to paid wage labor. Edward's solution was the Indenture System. War was transformed into a standardized, legally binding employment contract. These contracts relied on a physical mechanism called a chirograph. Identical terms were written on a single piece of parchment, which was then sliced down the middle with a jagged, interlocking cut. This was a strict anti-fraud measure. The royal paymaster held one half, and the mercenary captain held the other. Only perfectly interlocking pieces guaranteed the agreed-upon headcount and the daily silver wage. This birthed a new class of professional, pragmatically equipped archers and men-at-arms who fought strictly for a daily paycheck. The indenture system replaced the unreliable obligations of the feudal pyramid with the enforceable logic of contract law. Meeting the daily payroll for an indentured army of tens of thousands required unimaginable upfront liquidity. Raw wool exports generated steady future revenue, but a massive timeline gap existed between shipments and tax collection. Edward bridged this deficit by using the wool monopoly as collateral to secure immense venture capital loans from Florentine Super-Banks. The desperation of the crown's debt forced extreme measures. Edward literally pawned the great crown of England to the Archbishop of Trier, and he later secretly fled his creditors in Ghent when he couldn't satisfy their demands. The English war machine operated as a highly leveraged startup. It was capable of spectacular violence, but it ran entirely on ruinous foreign debt. The Battle of Crécy in 1346 was the ultimate stress test of Edward's new military-industrial model against traditional feudalism. The battlefield hosted a direct clash of systems. Chaotic French feudal nobility met the disciplined ranks of English longbowmen. This wage labor force operated with horrific efficiency, mathematically dismantling a numerically superior army for minimal losses. The immediate return on investment was the capture of the port of Calais. This established a permanent continental beachhead to protect the English wool supply chain. The financial fallout was catastrophic. The staggering cost of the indenture system caused Edward to default, triggering the bankruptcy of the Florentine Super-Banks. With foreign credit ruined, the crown became utterly dependent on domestic taxation, forcing the king to constantly argue his case before the English Parliament for funds. This dependency empowered the House of Commons. In exchange for granting taxes to fund the war, Parliament extracted permanent legislative and administrative concessions from the crown. The 14th century functioned as a closed causal loop. Wool monopolies secured Italian debt. Italian debt funded professional indentures, and indentured armies won the territory to secure the wool trade. The Hundred Years' War proved that a kingdom's true reach was defined by its ability to service debt and enforce contracts. Chivalry remained on the effigies, but power now resided in the ledgers of the state.